I had dated supermodels who graced magazine covers, actresses who lit up screens, and socialites who owned rooms. But none of them made me feel what she did. The day I met her, everything I thought I knew about love changed forever. If you've ever wondered whether true love exists beyond physical attraction and social status, stay with me for the next half hour. This story might just change how you see relationships forever. I lived what most would call a charmed life. My mornings began in penthouses overlooking city skylines, the kind where the fog lingered below the windows as if even the clouds couldn't reach where I was. Business meetings flowed into exclusive parties, and weekends meant private jets to destinations that appeared in travel magazines. I had custom suits for every day of the month, a collection of watches worth more than most people's homes, and reservations at restaurants with wait lists longer than my attention span. The women in my life came and went like perfect storms, beautiful, intense, and leaving everything changed in their wake. There was Adriana, the runway model whose face launched fragrance campaigns across Europe. Our relationship was a series of glamorous appearances, punctuated by passionate arguments in five-star hotel rooms. Then came Olivia, the indie actress whose critical acclaim had just landed her a major studio role. We connected intellectually, but drifted apart when her shooting schedule took her to remote locations. Sophia, the third-generation socialite, understood my world perfectly, perhaps too perfectly. We moved in the same circles, knew the same people, attended the same events. Dating her felt like dating a mirror reflection of my own lifestyle. What no one tells you about dating in the spotlight is how performative it becomes. The carefully selected restaurants where you know photographers might be waiting, the calculated social media posts that hint at your relationship without revealing too much, the unspoken competition between couples at industry events. It was exhausting, but I'd convinced myself this was what success looked like. This was what I had worked for. Despite the enviable Instagram feed and the contacts in my phone that would make entertainment journalists salivate, something hollow lived in the center of it all. I'd find myself alone after parties, sitting on balconies overlooking city lights, wondering why accomplishing everything I thought I wanted left me feeling so unsatisfied. The women were intelligent, ambitious, stunning, but our connections remained surface level, as if we were both afraid to crack the perfect veneer we'd created. There were moments that should have been perfect. Popping champagne on a yacht at sunset, receiving industry awards, being featured in magazines. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I was playing a role rather than living a life. The genuine laughter came less frequently. Conversations felt scripted. Even intimacy had become a performance. The breaking point wasn't dramatic. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. I was sitting across from a woman who checked every box on my superficial list. Beautiful, connected, accomplished. We were at the most exclusive restaurant in the city, and as she talked about the latest industry gossip, I realized I couldn't remember a single meaningful conversation we'd ever had. I couldn't tell you her hopes, her fears, what kept her up at night, or what made her feel truly alive. Worse yet, she couldn't tell you those things about me either. I excused myself and stood in the bathroom of that five-star restaurant, staring at my reflection under perfect lighting. Is this it? I asked myself. Is this all there is? The man looking back at me had everything society told him to want, yet something fundamental was missing. I didn't have a name for it yet, but the emptiness had become impossible to ignore. I needed something real in a world built on appearances. I just didn't know where to find it. I met her on a rainy Tuesday afternoon at a coffee shop in a neighborhood I rarely visited. My car was in the shop, and my driver had dropped me off at what he assured me was the best place for coffee in this part of town. It wasn't sleek or trendy, just a small warm space filled with mismatched furniture and the rich aroma of freshly ground beans. She was behind the counter, hair wrapped in a colourful headscarf, focused entirely on the latte art she was creating. No designer clothes, no calculated pose for invisible cameras, just someone completely present in her moment. When she looked up and smiled, something shifted in the atmosphere around me. It wasn't the practiced smile I'd become accustomed to in my world. It was genuine, reaching all the way to eyes that seemed to see right through my carefully constructed facade. "First time here?" she asked, sliding the most beautiful cup of coffee I'd ever seen across the counter. I nodded, suddenly aware of how out of place my tailored suit looked in this neighborhood spot. "Then this one's on the house," she said. "New friends get the first cup free." Her name was Maya. Unlike the women who recognized my name or status immediately, she treated me like any other customer walking through her door. Our conversation lasted barely 5 minutes, but I found myself thinking about it for days afterward. There was something refreshingly authentic about her. No pretense, no performance, just genuine human connection over a perfectly crafted cup of coffee. I returned the next day, and the next, each visit extending our conversations by precious minutes. In a world where I had grown accustomed to calculated interactions, Maya's straightforward honesty was like finding water in a desert I hadn't even realized I was wandering through. Dating Maya meant stepping into a world entirely different from what I knew. My friends reacted with raised eyebrows and knowing smirks when I mentioned she owned a coffee shop rather than walked runways. "Just getting it out of your system," one asked over drinks. I let the comment slide, but it stuck with me how quickly they assumed she was temporary. Meeting her family was its own adventure. Her father, a retired history professor, questioned me with the precision of a seasoned academic. Her mother observed more than she spoke, but I felt her protective gaze evaluating whether I was worthy of her daughter's time. Maya's 3 brothers made it clear they'd seen men like me come and go in their community, taking what they wanted and disappearing back to their privileged lives. The cultural differences emerged in unexpected moments. At a gallery opening where I was being honored, Maya stood out in her vibrant patterns among a sea of black designer wear. I caught glimpses of subtle glances, the whispered conversations that paused when we approached. Maya noticed too, but handled it with a grace I came to admire. "Their curiosity is their problem, not mine," she told me later. The hardest part wasn't the outside world, but confronting my own ingrained assumptions. When Maya spoke passionately about issues affecting her community, I realized how sheltered my perspective had been. Our arguments weren't about trivial things like my previous relationships. They were substantive, challenging me to examine beliefs I had never questioned. Social media exploded when photos of us first appeared online. Comments ranged from supportive to vicious. Maya received messages questioning her motives, while my feed filled with people either applauding my bravery or suggesting I had lost my mind. Neither reaction acknowledged the simple truth. I was falling in love with someone who made me feel more myself than I had in years. Maya changed me in ways I never expected. The man who once evaluated relationships by what they added to his image began to understand what it meant to grow with someone. Where my previous partners had reinforced the world I already knew, Maya expanded mine. She challenged my perspectives not to win arguments, but because she genuinely believed I was capable of seeing beyond my privileged bubble. I remember the Sunday morning she dragged me out of bed at dawn to help serve breakfast at her community center. I stood beside her, awkwardly dishing out scrambled eggs to people experiencing homelessness. People I'd previously walked past without truly seeing. Maya knew everyone by name, knew their stories. That morning taught me more about genuine human connection than all my networking events combined. What struck me most was how Maya moved through life with purpose rather than performance. She didn't curate her existence for others' approval. Her laughter was uninhibited, her anger honest, her love unconditional. In her presence, I found myself dropping the carefully constructed persona I'd maintained for years. The exhausting mask I wore in my professional and social circles felt unnecessary with her. "You know what I love about you?" she asked one night as we walked through her neighborhood, her hand comfortably in mine. "You're finally becoming the man you were before the world told you who to be." That statement hit me like a revelation. With the models and actresses and socialites, I had been collecting trophies, constructing a life that looked impressive from the outside. With Maya, I was building something that felt right from within. The difference was transformative. For the first time in years, I felt authentically myself, and discovered that person was someone I actually liked. Maya taught me that home wasn't about the address or the square footage. Home was about creating a space where both of us could be authentic. We started small, weekends at her apartment above the coffee shop, where morning light filtered through plants lining every windowsill. I learned that luxury wasn't always about thread counts and brand names. Sometimes it was about homemade bread, still warm from the oven, and conversations that lasted until sunrise. The first time I cooked for her, burning a supposedly simple pasta dish, she laughed without mockery and showed me how her grandmother had taught her to salvage almost any kitchen disaster. That night, eating our imperfect meal at her tiny kitchen table, I felt more comfortable than I ever had at five-star restaurants. We created rituals uniquely ours. Sunday mornings meant walking through her neighborhood farmers market, greeting vendors she'd known for years. Wednesdays became our culture exchange nights, where we shared pieces of our different backgrounds through food, music, stories, and traditions. I introduced her to jazz clubs and art galleries I genuinely loved, rather than those I attended to be seen. She brought me to spoken word performances and community celebrations vibrant with life and meaning. The most profound moment came when I realized I'd stopped checking my phone constantly, stopped worrying about who might see us together, stopped calculating how each experience could benefit my image. Instead, I found myself fully present, creating memories that weren't meant to be shared online but treasured between us. "You know what makes this work?" Maya asked one evening, as we sat on her fire escape, watching the neighborhood settle into night. "We're building something that belongs just to us, not to your world or mine, but something entirely new." She was right. Together, we had created our own definition of home, one built on understanding, growth, and a love that felt like finally exhaling after holding my breath for years. I always thought commitment would feel like giving something up. With my past relationships, there was always this nagging sense that by choosing one person, I'd be closing doors to countless other possibilities. That's why I'd kept everyone at arm's length, enjoying the company without truly letting anyone in. With Maya, the revelation came quietly. We were sitting on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by takeout containers, planning a trip to visit her grandmother. As she talked animatedly about all the places from her childhood she wanted to show me, I realized I wasn't just saying yes to a trip. I was saying yes to being woven into the fabric of her life, to meeting the people who shaped her, to understanding the roots that made her who she was. The thought didn't terrify me as it once would have. Instead, it felt like the most natural progression imaginable. I wanted to be part of her story, just as she had become an essential part of mine. Later that night, as Maya slept beside me, I found myself thinking about the word home. For years, home had been properties I owned, impressive addresses that served as status symbols more than sanctuaries. But here, in her modest apartment with the creaky floors and the window that never quite closed properly, I felt a sense of belonging I'd never experienced in any of my expensive residences. I realized that home wasn't a place at all. Home was this feeling, this certainty that I was exactly where I belonged, with exactly who I was meant to be with. The models, actresses, and socialites had been accessories to the life I thought I should want. Maya was the foundation of the life I actually needed. The ring I eventually chose wasn't the largest or most expensive in the jewelry store. Instead, it was one with character and meaning. much like the woman I planned to give it to, because I'd finally learned that true value isn't about price tags or appearances. It's about finding the person who makes every place feel like home. If this story touched something in you, take a moment to reflect on your own definition of home. Share this with someone who needs to hear that love goes deeper than what we see on the surface. Subscribe for more stories that challenge how we think about love and connection.